What is the world's most evil company and why? Story 1. I don't like Manulife Financial after I spent a few months being a pregnancy relief receptionist at death and disability claims in the 90s. It was not good. Everything you might suspect about insurance is true. It's ugly and vile and inhuman and absurd. When I left, it was before my contract was up, with a stolen file, and with a threat to the manager that if this dude, whose file I'd pilfered, didn't call me with the news money was in his account by 7 p.m., I'd take all of this shit to the media. John, I'll always remember you. The accident that destroyed your wrist in the mine. The one that was covered. The helicopter ride to the local major metropolitan hospital to fix it. The car accident with a moose 2 months later that bent the metal pins to a 90-degree angle. And the fact MF said they wouldn't cover this new helicopter ride because they'd already paid for a helicopter ride? The part where we forced you to prove you were disabled every month for $75 plus a pop until we changed the number on the form and didn't let you know? And you called a 55-yo miner weeping because his 16-yo daughter stopped eating lunch and you didn't have another 75 plus? You'd filled out the form we sent you, but it was wrong before it arrived. So you called and said you were headed out to the wood shack and would just take the fucking hand off at the wrist. So I did what I did. And you had the disability payment you had bought and were owed by the time we spoke that evening. I never went back. And when my placement agency called and tried to UO-braid me for unprofessional behavior, I told them to never ever send me to a company that was actively ripping off and trying to kill their clients. Story 2. They are all becoming evil. Right to repair laws are needed ASAP, and not just for one segment. A law that goes across the board on anything and everything sold. I want to be able to repair what I buy at a fair and reasonable price without the manufacturer stepping in otherwise. Software locking components now to prevent home repairs? Just how low can a company go to steal your money? Story 3. The 3 credit bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Your ability to get loans for cars, houses, etc. depends on your credit history they collect, but they are notorious for having mistakes, as a result of fraud or otherwise, and customer service that's so terrible that it is sometimes impossible to correct mistakes in your credit history record. Plus, in 2017, Equifax had the personal information data breach that included social security numbers and is the reason it's recommended that you get your credit history frozen. Now, if you want to apply for a loan, you have to go through the hassle of unfreezing your credit history first at all 3 credit bureaus. At one time, they charged you to do this. I'm not sure if it's true, but I heard that each company has stakes in the other 2. So they are basically trying to financially benefit from the data breach. I don't use the word hate very much, but edit. Thanks for all the upvotes, everyone. I wanted to clarify, it seems, a common misconception. When I refer to freezing, I'm referring to your credit history, not your score. Your history continues to build, and your score continues to change accordingly as you pay or not pay your bills, apply for credit cards and loans, regardless of whether it's frozen or not. When your history is frozen, nobody, including you, can use it to apply for a loan, mortgage, or a credit card. These are called hard pulls of your credit score, which can negatively affect your score when performed, especially multiple times in a short time period. Lenders find it to be risky behavior, so the bureaus dock your score. Soft pulls of your credit score, like when you check your score on a website or app, don't affect your credit score. I'm not a financial professional, so make sure to take my words for what they are, but I recommend that everyone freeze their credit history at all 3 bureaus ASAP. That way nobody can use your personal info to apply for things that can affect your credit score. Then, thaw it only during the time period people need to do hard pulls from it, then freeze it again. This all can be done online, if you're lucky. But we are all at the mercy of 3 for-profit companies to care for our precious credit history and personal information, and they have done an awful job at it this far, impacting people's lives in terrible ways, as commentators have made it clear. Story 4. There's a great Behind the Bastards podcast about the Nestle Corporation. The podcast format is usually something like 1.5 hours spent digging into the history of the topic, and then 1.5 hours really digging into how fucking awful the topic is. That's where I learned that the Nestle Corporation would help design, build, and pay for maternity wards in hospitals with the condition that they give baby formula to every single new mother, regardless if they needed it or not. Then the wards were designed to place the mothers and the infants as far away as possible to make it difficult for nurses to get babies to their mothers. Lactation is hard enough. Why not try bottle feeding? Then they'd give the new mothers Nestle baby formula. Then they'd send nursing experts into the hospitals unprompted and unannounced to talk to the new mothers to seed ideas of doubt about the quality of their breast milk. They were dressed up as nurses and never identified they were employees of Nestle. They'd provide basic information and tips but then push baby formula on them. Basically, are you sure your breast milk is really the best quality? Wouldn't you want that peace of mind and give your child the highest quality formula? Nestle learned from cigarette companies and went full steam ahead until they started killing children in Africa. Story 5. Nestle. Forget the CEO saying water isn't a right. They own their part of their workforce and have been called out on it repeatedly. There has been article after article written about this. A few years ago, they even released a fancy infographic explaining how they were trying to reduce the use of slave labor. Nestle chocolate is slave chocolate. If you are put on their fishing boats or cocoa plantations, you're finished. You are a line item on a sheet, and worked with no pay or benefits, and just enough food to keep you alive. If you break, you are discarded and left to die. If you are on a fishing boat and get hurt or sick, you'll just be tossed overboard in the ocean. Think about this the next time you see the Quick Rabbit or pick up a Nestle Crunch bar. Story 6. Bayer. They used human blood to make a blood clotting medicine. Then, as the AIDS crisis started becoming more of a thing, the U.S. started mandating that companies test products like that for HIV. Turns out that almost all of their stock contained HIV and had a good likelihood of giving people who took it AIDS, so they sold it in the third world where testing wasn't mandated, mostly in Asia and Latin America. Result was a giant surge in AIDS in those places. They literally sold medicine they knew would kill people. Story 7. Facebook. They knowingly created an algorithm that boosted content with angry reactions, which in turn disseminated misinformation that has cost lives and created divisions between people, our friends and family. Whatever controversial view Uncle Bob held is being shoved right in our faces. They have perpetuated the process of dividing us between young and old, rich and poor, black and white, left and right, liberal and conservative. And they did it all because more clicks equals more money in their pockets. Fuck Facebook. Story 8. The Cargill Corporation. It's a privately owned agribusiness that runs almost everything food-related. Meat for McDonald's? Cargill. Feed corn? Cargill. Cacao beans for Nestle produced using child slavery? Cargill. There's a serious case to be made that Cargill and Cargill-owned companies are the largest single consumer of slave labor ever. They're also the absolute worst for the environment and for foreign economies. If this picks up steam, I'll go hunt down the report which lists a bunch of their crimes and edit a link in. Story 9. Charo and Pokphand Group. They treat their workers like slaves. Tens of thousands of workers have to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 10,000 baht a month, US 304. Their 13,000 7-Eleven stores are one of the largest contributors of plastic waste in Asia. They sell cheap cigarettes and high-content alcohol all over Thailand with no regard for the social consequences. This company is a disgrace and has no corporate responsibility. Story 10. Any of the privately owned prisons in the U.S. The problem is the prison industrial complex, which is different than private prisons which are also bad. The prison industrial complex is the sale of prison slave labor to for-profit companies. Basically, every government-owned prison does this. Often it can include two for-profit companies that are then contracted to provide goods or services to the prison they purchase the labor from, meaning the for-profit company is making bank selling the prison the product of its own prisoners, slaves, labor at a very marked-up price. Often these companies even take a portion of the joke of a wage made for things like transporting them to go provide labor. It's an intentional muddying of the issue by government, so things like Biden's abolishing federal private prisons seems like big prison reform, while it actually changes nothing of the bigger issue of corruption. Also, it's in no way just these specialized prison companies. Since the pandemic, a ton of Fortune 500 companies have decided to turn to American slave labor rather than bother replacing workers quitting over shit pay, because they get to pay significantly under minimum wage, qualify for government assistance in many states, for workers with zero agency in work conditions. Story 11. Fucking Ticketmaster. Convenience fee? For using your website or app? Pre-sale blocks of tickets to yourself to scalp sold-out shows on your vertically integrated StubHub and SeatGeek? Sweet. Thanks, cocksuckers. It's not like I was waiting 20 years to finally see Radiohead. Honorable mention to those water-grabbing fucks at Nestle, and Zuckerberg can lick each of my testicles individually. Story 12. Nestle, DuPont, Purdue, Halliburton, Citadel Securities, etc. The list goes on. There's probably hundreds of legal companies operating with revenues in the billions that have directly caused the downfall of our society's progress and contributed to the deaths of hundreds of thousands if not millions. We need to hold companies like this accountable for their actions as a people because our governing bodies are bought and paid for by them. One day we will all realize this and make them pay. Story 13. Any medical corporation in America. You want to stay alive? That'll be $50,000. Oh, you were unconscious? We just assumed that you would have consented to a $60,000 air ambulance ride when the ground ambulance could have taken 5 minutes longer. Oh, and since the thing was in the air for 75 minutes, we're going to charge you by the minute. How much are we paying our workers? Do they at least get breaks? Lol, are you kidding? We're struggling financially. Story 14. Nestle. Destroying land and hoarding the majority of natural water resources here in the U.S. and throughout the world. With unethical business practices such as taking clean drinking water in areas that sorely need it, participating in human trafficking and child labor, and exploiting uneducated mothers in third-world countries, Nestle is quite possibly one of the world's most corrupt corporations. Story 15. Amazon has got to be the most evil. It uses technology and machine learning artificial intelligence to undercut its workers. They determine the lowest salary, and most work then can give using technology. I have been doing delivery for Amazon, and the routes are horrendous. You don't know where you're going to be sent driving your own car. Most of these are very remote rural areas at 9-10 p.m. where you can get shot or killed, and they don't care because they make you sign as contractor, and they won't be liable for anything. If you work for Amazon, you are not really working for Amazon. You are working for a subcontractor for Amazon, so you cannot sue them. Chiquita Bananas. I'm not sure if they're that evil currently, but they have a really bad history of killing protesting workers, starting wars, and supporting terrorist organizations. I've scrolled so much and hasn't seen anyone mention this but Chevron. They were found guilty in America and were ordered to pay. The lawyer who represented the victims is currently sitting in jail in the U.S. Shell is about to start blasting the wild coast of South Africa to find oil. It's during whale migration season as well. Every 30 seconds, 24 hours a day for 6 months, they will blast sound waves at the ocean floor. The ocean wildlife is going to be destroyed. My grandma brings up Facebook 2 or 3 times every time we talk. Facebook has made a captive audience of the elderly. They got on FB to keep up with family and instead are being blasted all day long with a personalized stream of propaganda. I'd like to put East India Company into the list. Responsible for approximately 20-30 million deaths by forcing farmers to grow cash crops instead of food. They legit increased the taxes on farmers during a famine so that the famine wouldn't hurt their bottom line. Citadel Securities. They and their ilk have fleeced generations of people out of their wealth via high-frequency trading, dark pools, pump and dumps, and what could be called legal tax evasion, and so defrauded our very economy and nation. Their practices have invalidated securities trading on fundamentals and decoupled real-world value from derivative speculation. Their manipulation currently has a stranglehold on American investment. LuLaRoe. Constant pressure to buy, yet never earning a profit. Add insult to injury. Products would come in moldy, smelly, and unwearable. Don't forget the penis-shaped designs printed by the crotch. The market for LLR became oversaturated. Nobody would buy anymore. The owners, in response, berated and belittled their consultants. Fuck MLMs.